Well, shoot! Shoot! Well, I made myself a mold that doesn't fit in my spar-style skateboard press. Time to build a bigger one. Hey there, it's Chris from Good Roads. Spar presses are cheap, easy to build, and can exert a shocking amount of force, so they're a great way for a hobbyist or even a small shop to get pressing super high quality decks. Like the name suggests, the way the press works is this. Spars span across the mold and are clamped down using threaded rods or bolts, washers, and nuts. So the first thing we're going to need is some spars. I'm cutting mine out of some 2x4s. The length of the spars is the width of my mold plus about 2 inches on each side for the threaded rod. I'm making a 5-spar press for my longer molds, but you can press a standard skate deck no problem with only 4. And for every spar that gets clamped down on the mold, you need a matching one on the bottom, so I'm making 10 total. We're also going to need a base for the mold. I'm going extra wide, so I'm cutting mine out of some particle board I had around, but if you're making a standard sized board, you can use 10-inch wide planks straight from the home goods store. Once my base was cut, I started marking out where my spars were going to go. They don't have to be perfect, I'm just doing my best to try to keep them evenly spaced. I secured the bottom spars in place using wood glue and screws. Next, we need to drill holes for the threaded rod or bolts. I'm using one of my washers to get a general idea of where they need to go. Just be sure not to put them too close to the ends of your boards, or you'll run the risk of splitting them. Then drill your holes. Once the holes in the base of the press are drilled, you can use them as a guide to mark where the holes need to go in your upper spars. In the past, I've drilled my upper and lower holes pretty close to the size of my bolts and left the bolts loose in the press so that I can easily adjust for any minor misalignments. The downside to that approach is every time you want to move the press, the bolts fall out and go everywhere. It's a real pain. So this time I'm trying something different. I'm going to fix my bolts in place and drill the holes on my upper spars much larger so that I can easily drop them in place. I'm also going to make those updates on my 4-spar press while I'm at it, and once those holes were drilled, I inserted the bolts and cinched down some nuts to keep them locked in place. And that press is actually done. See? I told you it was simple. You press a board by putting your mold and layout between the bolts, dropping the upper spars in place, and clamping them down. You can use nuts and hand tighten them with a wrench. I did it that way for years. More recently, I've been using these 3D printed knobs with embedded nuts that make the job much faster. But there's an even faster way that I just learned about. Clear! That is a new state record! Yeah, an impact driver in the right socket is wicked fast, and it gives you more clamping force than you'd be able to get by hand. So that's my 4-spar press updated. But what about the bigger one? Well, I've got one additional problem to solve. The longer bolts on that press have a section that isn't threaded, which means if I want to fix them in place, I'm not going to be able to just wrench down a nut until it's tight. Fortunately, I found this length of steel tubing that has the perfect inner diameter, so I'm just going to cut myself some spacers. After a little cleanup on the belt sander, we're ready to rock. Just drop the spacers in place and clamp them down. And with that, I've got a press that fits even my biggest molds, at least for now. So there you go, a spar press, a super easy, cheap way of getting a massive amount of clamping force on your DIY skateboard molds. In my decade plus of making DIY skateboard decks, the spar press is by far the method that I've used the most. They are super reliable, you can use them with any kind of mold from foam all the way up to concrete, and if you even need to be mobile, they're really easy to break down and move around. They're a great tool for a small shop, so next week we're going to be using a spar press to press a deck using a 3D printed set of skateboard molds that I am going to be making available for free and open source. So if you're interested in seeing that and all of the other awesome DIY board sport projects we do here on the channel, you're just gonna have to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you got questions or comments, leave them down below. If you like the content and would like to support the channel, you can join these amazing folks right here and pitch in a little over on Patreon. Keeps the shops flush with materials and keeps the projects coming. As always, I love having you all along for the ride, so until next time, I'll see you soon.